What's going on YouTube? This is Rybo at the kitchen table this morning. I'm going to do a head-to-head video today of these two watches. I just filmed the review of this, so if you see the same setting, it's because I'm doing these back-to-back and then I'll schedule them out. But this is the Bertucci DX3 design A-2S case, and I'll put the model number and everything out there if I can find it for sale. There's a field watch, 100 meters water resistance. And this is the Seiko SNK809 automatic watch from Seiko. They have a lot of different color options on it. Well, not a lot. They have a blue, green, khaki, black. So these are very similar watches, I think, in price. They kind of fluctuate, both of these, between $60 and $100, kind of depending on which one you get and what the supply is at the time. Both bead blasted cases. The SNK here is under 40 meters. This is about 40 millimeters. This is about 40 millimeters. Like I said, bead blasted case, 4 o'clock crown, kind of the field watch, semi-pilot watch aesthetic. What else do they have in common? It said price point. I guess utility is kind of the same. This is obviously an automatic. This is a quartz. And then the other thing they have in common is neither one of these is on the stock strap. So this is on a toxic NATO Shiznit strap, which I really like to wear it on. And this is on some kind of fake pleather, really terrible quality leather NATO that I should not have bought, but I did on Watch You Seek. I don't have any other 18 millimeters at the moment, so that's what it's on. But honestly, it's probably better than the stock strap that it came on. So I won't be talking about the straps at all for these. Categories for today. So field watch categories: case crystal, the Loom, the utility, which I feel like is a very important thing in a field watch, the movement, dial, wrist presence, which will be interesting, value, and the intangibles. Today I have some new kind of buttons, voting buttons. So this is my new logo. This is the workbench that I typically review on, and the mallet, which is kind of my sign, my maker's mark type thing. I'll do a video at some point explaining why. There's some context there, but these are all stickers. Honestly, these are just things I want to give away to people. So if I buy a knife from you or sell a knife or do a swap or something like that, I try to throw this kind of stuff in. Just something kind of fun. But I also use them for voting buttons here. All right, so let's get into it. Case crystal. So mineral crystal, and I believe you have a mineral crystal on the 809 as well. Case is somewhat similar. The Bertucci has this shroud around it and a much more pronounced case with these wide lugs out here. The Seiko is more refined all around, just kind of more subtle in pretty much every aspect. You can see I have actually dented up. Well, if you can see, yeah, I kind of chipped out the case here. So it's not the it's not the most durable construction ever, but the watch held up just fine. If I had to pick between these two, they're very different. I think the case is probably the most different thing about them. But thinking about the function of a watch kind of like this, I kind of like the Bertucci case a little bit better. So for one, you have a recessed crystal in here, which means if I drop this on its face, it's not going to damage the crystal, which is really, really nice. And then two, the case allows you just to have all kind of straps because these lugs sit so high from the rest of the case. You can get really thick straps in there. It is fixed spring bars, which is that may be a hate it type thing for some people, but with the 809, these are so tight that it's sometimes hard to get anything but very thin straps through here. So I have some thicker leather straps that will not fit here. And also you have this crystal coming right up to the case. So you are probably going to end up scuffing this and scraping it a little bit more. Both of them are fine, but I think I probably prefer the Bertucci after watching it for a little bit. After wearing it for a little bit. Loom. So you have Seiko Loom and non-Seiko Loom. So typically I would say the advantage goes to the Seiko here. And I would give that advantage just on the luminosity, if that is the correct word, alone, because Seiko loom is better. There's no doubt about it. Although the Bertucci loom is some kind of Swiss loom that's been very, very good. I've been very impressed with it in the middle of the night. The reason I'm going to give the advantage to the Bertucci is not the actual luminous material itself, but it's how it was applied. So you can see that the hands have a good bit of applied loom, and then you have kind of squares or batons on each of the indices. On the SNK here, you have just very small loom on the hands and second hand. And then, the Bertucci also has second hand loom. And then the only other loom spots are these little dots at each indice. There is no loom on that triangle right there. So what that means is while the Seiko is more luminous in general in terms of the actual material, it is harder to see because they just didn't put much of it on the dial. Honestly, this dial is just ripe for some really crazy loom. You could have done really cool things with this dial with the loom. You could have loomed that center. You could have loomed the numbers here. You could have just loomed that triangle, which would improve the utility, quite a bit. But they didn't, and so this one definitely wins out. It is much easier to tell the time in the dark with that. Utility, I'm also going to give the advantage to the Bertucci here for a few reasons. So one, I mentioned already the loom. It's easier to read the time in the dark. You have a little bit more of a durable case. You have an easier case to put straps through. But you also have 100 meters water resistant with a screw-down crown. That is an incredible thing for a watch of this price. That is something that you just rarely see. You typically see that on dive watches that are 2 and 3 times the price of this watch. Making it 100 meters water resistant while this one is just a 50 is definitely would give the advantage of utility to the Bertucci. Also, the fact that it's a quartz watch with that case means that I feel fairly confident that I can beat this one up. This one, while it has been fairly rugged, like I said, I dropped it, chipped it out, and it still is running fine. I do tend to worry about this one a little bit more. There's just something about it that makes me feel like I'm about to break it whenever I wear it. All right, the movement. So I'll give the advantage to the Seiko here, and really it's an automatic movement. Now you can gripe about this movement all you want and the accuracy or lack thereof of this movement, but I believe it's the same one that is in the SKX here. It I think does serve a purpose in that it can get people who do not know anything about automatic watches to really enjoy automatic watches. And I can speak firsthand to this. I've had several friends who I've given this watch to that have gotten really interested because it has a display case back where you can see how this is working. And for, $70, getting an automatic watch is pretty insane, especially when you can go online and see reviews where people have had this thing for years and it's held up just fine. If you want accuracy, if you want durability, maybe go with the quartz. But the fact that you can get an automatic movement in a watch of this price point is really, really cool. So I'm going to give the advantage there. All right, the dial. So I'll give the advantage to the SNK here. I love the dial on both of these. I've talked before in the review on the Bertucci about the simplicity of this dial and how easy it is to read. But there's just something really, really cool about the dial in this SNK. It's complex, but it's not that complex. It has some cool aesthetic. I've seen some tips on where this is actually a great watch to teach kids how to tell time, because you have the minute markings around the outside, and then you have the hour markings on the inside. So if you're looking at this, you can say, okay, it is 12, 27, 28. And that's a really cool thing. So there's some utility to the dial. It's a very cool aesthetic. I like that it has the black, day-date wheel behind it. So it is a very nice looking dial. And so I'll give the advantage to the Seiko there. All right, wrist presence. This one's really tough because these watches do wear a little bit differently. So this one definitely looks a little bit more classy, a little bit more dressed up. I think that it's easier to dress it up or dress it down. However, it does wear very, very small on the wrist. I do not have large wrists, between 7 inches and 7 1/4. And this looks very, very small, I think, on my wrists, at least in person. Now, I'm wearing it on a double pass-through, so it is going to kind of lift it up a little bit more, but it's a fairly small watch. The Bertucci has a totally different aesthetic. This is more kind of a rugged, durable, kind of beat it up watch. It's going to look a little bit bigger, even though the internal dial diameter is about the same. It's just going to look a little bit beefier on the wrist. This is a really subjective thing, and I kind of go back and forth on this. I'm going to call this one a flat tie, just because I think that they're probably two different, I don't know. I'll probably change my mind every day on this. Sometimes if I want to dress it up or dress it down, this is a great watch to have because it can look, nice dressed down. You could also wear this to work. This one's not really going to be a watch that you'd want to wear to work necessarily or wear with nicer clothes, but it's going to be pretty rugged, and I think it looks really, really nice on the wrist. I think this one wears a bit better on the wrist because of those lugs, and I think it just fills the wrist a little bit nicer. But this one does have some versatility to it. So I'm going to call that one a flat tie with no winners. Value. So like I said, you have similar prices. They fluctuate quite a bit, but they are around the same roughly, generally speaking. Which one's better? I mean, really the selling point of this is that you get this automatic movement. And so that is a really big thing. Now, granted, it's not the most accurate movement. It's fairly cheaply made. It's, I think, a robotic made movement. It's, a Japanese made, a Seiko thing that's automated. So you're not looking at your typical kind of, I don't know. It's a production movement. There's nothing super fancy about it. This is a quartz movement. Granted, it's a Japanese quartz, so I think it's very nice. I really liked it. I think it's fairly high quality. But on this one, I'm going to say Bertucci. And really, I think it's because while you are getting a quartz movement, you're getting one that's not your typical Chinese quartz movement. You're getting a very nice case. You're getting really nice milling on the back. You have 100 meters water resistant with a screw down crown, and it's got some nice loom. That screw down crown making it 100 meters is it's hard to really overstate that on a watch like this. That really ups the utility of this. It really, to me, ups the value of it for what you're spending. And while you do have the cool factor of an automatic watch over here, that is just a really awesome thing. So I would give the advantage to the Bertucci. All right, so finally, intangibles. It looks like the Bertucci is going to win this. But if I had to pick intangibles, if I did this test a year ago, I'd probably say the SNK. There's some recency bias that's going to make me say the Bertucci. I think they're both really cool. I think that this has the ability to get people into watches and is a very cool dial. It appeals to a lot of different people. There's something really special and unique about the Bertucci that I really, really like. It's something brand that I just never really paid attention to. Got me back into quartz watches. I really, really like it. I think it's funky, it's different, and it's really, really cool. Plus, I think it's a very utilitarian watch, and it's something that's been getting a lot of wrist time. So if I had to pick intangibles, I would probably at this moment go with the Bertucci, but check back in with me in a couple months. Maybe some of that's worn off. At the end of the day, I think both of these are good value watches. I think that you can't really go wrong with either one. Kind of depends on if you want to maintain something like this. To me, honestly, I have so many automatic watches, I really don't want to wind another one up, especially if I'm just going to be wearing it for a day. And if, I'm going camping or whatever. This is a great grab and go watch that's been getting a ton of wrist time. So I'm going to give the win to the Bertucci. I hope you've enjoyed this head-to-head review, and I'll see you next time.